All right. I think we are live. Hello. I know this all looks very weird, but give it a second and we'll get everyone on board here. And we will get started in just a second as I pull up a bunch of stuff here. Hope you're doing well. I hope you notice. For those of you who are not regulars, this looks very different from what you're used to. What I'm hoping for is that I can change this whole background over the next week or two so it actually looks like a space to do these videos. Hopefully, the sound quality will be a little better. Hopefully, the video quality will be a little better. I have to get used to looking at a different camera as well. My entire world in this little house is rejiggering and it's very weird right now. Anyway, I'll get used to it. I hope it works out for you and you don't notice anything weird. So I have so many things we are going to talk about. Let me get the stuff out of the way. You can always support this show by going to patreon.com/Hemant. Please do that. It helps out a ton. And if nothing else, you can always go to friendlyatheist.com. You could subscribe for free. Do it. Or you can subscribe for money, whatever you want to do. It helps out a ton. Den is here, who is helping us out. He's been sick. I hope you feel better, Den, but he's here to help out with moderation. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, leave them in the chat and we'll get to them in between stories. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. I know it's been a bad week if you care about, health, democracy, everything like that. I figured I would start with something kind of light because a lot of the stories I want to talk about today are very much not that. And I haven't posted about this yet. I was going to do it a little later. But in case you missed this, there was a story on Fox and Friends in the morning. And I'm not going to play the clip for you because I'm afraid they're going to get mad at me if I play any of it for you. But basically, the people at Fox and Friends, one of the co-hosts, Ainsley Earhart, she visited Ark Encounter this week, and they did basically a 5-minute infomercial about that Noah's Ark replica in Kentucky that doesn't float, and it has no basis of being the replica for Noah's Ark. But basically, on the show, Ainsley Earhart visited the boat with her daughter and her daughter's friends and their moms, and they just had a gal's trip. And of course, along the way, she asked no serious questions about all the problems with the Ark, because she's a journalist. But in that segment, she asks a bunch of rhetorical questions to her children. Things like, I'm quoting here, can you imagine if God came to you and said, I'm going to have a flood and everyone's going to die except for you because you're so faithful? So I need you to build an ark and it's going to be that big? Which, by the way, is a horrifying thing to say to a child, but Christians consider that a good story. So, throughout that segment, a spokesperson for Answers in Genesis, the parent company of the Ark Encounter, Brian Osborne, he walked the women through the boat and he promoted the things that are around the boat, like their zoo and their zip line, just saying, yeah, this is a family friendly place and everyone should come here. And after they did the segment at the Ark, the cameras cut back to Earhart and her co-hosts where they were just chatting like, wow, what a neat story you just did. And she said she wanted to return to the Ark really soon so she could take in the valuable literature and information. To which her co-host, Lawrence Jones, says, and history? And she responds, absolutely. Which is, again, very dumb on all their parts. Now, I'll show you a couple more things about this. One is when she posted about this segment on Facebook. Look at this. This is what she posted on Facebook. What a special day taking my daughter and her friends to the Noah's Ark replica in Kentucky. Thank you, Brian, for showing us around. We love learning about Noah, the animals on the ark, and of course, some history of the Bible. Sure. And then Brian Osborne, the Answers in Genesis guy, posted his own Facebook post saying, thankful for the opportunity to show Ainsley Earhart around Ark Encounter. Had a great time as they filmed a segment about her visit for Fox and Friends that aired today. So you're watching all of this and you're like, what exactly did Ark Encounter do to make the news? Right? Because I didn't know they were in the news for anything. And then even Ken Ham, the guy behind Ark Encounter and the Creation Museum, he tweeted this today. He said this short video clip about the Ark Encounter posted on the Fox News website has received over 5 million views already. Don't miss it. Watch it here. So here's the thing about all this. Why are they getting a segment on Fox and Friends? Even for Fox, that's like, why are you covering this? There's a lot of stuff happening right now, and none of them are happening at Ark Encounter, right? And the thing is, you would not know this unless you knew to look for it. But at the very beginning of the segment, if you look, I'm going to remove my face here so you could see this. At the very beginning of the segment, when they were just showing the boat, look at the very, very bottom of your screen. This segment is made possible by our sponsor, Ark Encounter. And that's the only way you would know that the only reason they did this segment is because Ark Encounter paid for basically a 5-minute commercial during an episode of Fox and Friends. Not paid for a commercial that aired during the show. I mean, they paid for a segment that aired on the show, right? They paid for that. And by the way, the same thing happened when Fox and Friends posted this segment on Facebook. Check this out. This is the clip they showed on Facebook. Fox and Friends host Ainsley Earhart gets a first-hand look at the incredible Ark Encounter, featuring a life-size replica of Noah's Ark in Williamstown, Kentucky. Plan your trip today. Sounds like they're promoting a product, and if you look at the top left of your screen right now, under Fox News, what does it say? Paid partnership. Because again, this is a paid ad that Ark Encounter asked for on Fox and Friends. And that's the point I'm making here. There's nothing illegal about this. It's not that one side or the other did anything wrong per se. Businesses pay for product placement all the time. But when the hosts and the sponsors are not telling you that out loud, I would argue it's pretty damn deceptive for the majority of viewers who don't understand that Fox, who don't understand any of this. And you know, the sort of people who watch Fox and who go to Ark Encounter do not understand this stuff, right? But Fox knows this. Ark Encounter knows this. In fact, when Fox aired a sponsored segment about the Catholic prayer app Hallow, like last December, it had like Mark Wahlberg doing a segment on the show for them. One of the hosts even said during the segment, "Thank you again to Hallow for this partnership." Like, it's not exactly saying, thanks for giving us money so we can promote you on our show, but it was kind of that. But they didn't do that for this Ark Encounter segment, which I just find weird. Osborne did not mention it in his Facebook posts. And one of the commenters that I saw on his post was like, wow, excellent PR for the Ark. Yeah, no kidding. You can buy a lot of good press if you have enough money to do it. And Ark Encounter has a lot of money. They spent $100 million on this stupid boat that doesn't float anywhere, which also serves as a museum to spread gullible lies to Christians. So I have looked all day for this. As of right now, as I'm filming this, Ark Encounter, Answers in Genesis, Ken Ham, none of those people have mentioned at all that they paid for this segment on the show, right? Not at all. And they have done this before. In 2019, believe it or not, they did the exact same thing. They paid for a segment on the show, and they promoted that one online, and they never mentioned the paid sponsorship. Check this out. This is from a now deleted post on Answers in Genesis's website. Answers in Genesis writer and speaker Bodie Hodge was recently interviewed by Todd Pirro from Fox and Friends on the Fox News channel down at the Ark Encounter. The resulting 3-minute video on the life-size Ark attraction was phenomenal. Bodie not only explained this world-class attraction, but clearly gave its biblical and evangelistic message. How often do you get to hear the gospel on national television? A lot, especially if you pay for your gospel message to be shown on screen. You know why you see Joel Osteen on TV every week? Because he pays to be on your TV. He pays for that time. You know what I mean? Answers in. I also found this funny when I was doing research for this. Turns out Ark Encounter has also sponsored Fox and Friends one other time, and you wouldn't know it unless I remove myself from this screen. Steve Ducey, one of the Fox co-hosts, Fox and Friends co-hosts, was promoting his cookbook over Christmas. Was this a year or two ago? 2022. And at the very bottom of your screen, you could see it says "Family Traditions," sponsored by Ark Encounter. And that's the only way you would know Ark Encounter was paying for that sort of placement. So, like I said, this isn't illegal. It's just deception that they're not telling you that they're paying for this placement. And part of me was wondering, why are they having to pay Fox to do an infomercial, like a 5-minute infomercial on their morning show? And the answer is basically that their ticket sales, which, by the way, I definitely still track after all these years with the help of a local paleontologist named Dan Phelps. I can show you this. Check this out. This is an actual graphic that shows the attendance numbers for Ark Encounter. This is updated to the minute here. And you could see their most recent attendance, 59,000 people, is way lower than what they had in 2024, 75,000. And that was in the month of May. Like, they are losing attendance every month compared to the same time the previous year. So no one's coming to their Ark, even post-COVID. And we know this because you could file open records, public records requests to get this information. But basically, Ark Encounter is not as popular as it used to be, even among the sort of Christians that follow this stuff for a living, that care about this stuff. And so I think they're just now reduced to paying Fox to talk to their dumbass audience about how amazing the fake Ark is. And what does that say about these people? You know what I mean? So anyway, that's what Ark Encounter is up to, in case you were wondering. And by the way, I believe this weekend, if you search for this on Facebook, I don't have it in front of me, there is a protest outside Ark Encounter taking place on this 4th of July weekend. And why are they protesting? They're basically arguing this is not science, and they are pretending to be science, and it's not. And guess what? There are still people out there who care about facts and the truth, and you're not going to get it inside this stupid boat. And so a handful of atheists and other people, and plenty of religious people who don't like it either, gather outside in a public space near the Ark, and they hold up signs and they kind of make their voice heard. I've been to that protest before several years ago. Won't be able to join them this time around, but it's a neat thing that they do. Okay, I'm going to stop with that story for now. Happy to take questions. What do we have, Den? As I do this. Meanwhile, 60 Minutes is paying off Trump for telling the truth. Paramount paid the Trump administration $16 million in a settlement this morning, or was it yesterday? Why? Because Trump said they falsely edited an interview they did with Kamala Harris last year, and you could see the footage. They edited it the same way they do any long interview. You got to condense it down to a few minutes. They didn't take away anything that was damning. Like, they just edited it for time. And Trump is like, that's unfair to me. And he's just shaking down all these businesses for money, just stealing whatever he can. And what is annoying is that these multi-million, sometimes multi-billion-dollar corporations are just bending their knee to give him whatever he wants. It doesn't matter if it's a legal firm, like one of the top earning law firms in the country. Doesn't matter if it's a media group, a tech monopoly. They're all just like, oh, Trump, what do you want? We'll give you however much you need. Like, it's absolutely corrupt and stupid. And I don't know what to do about it. I know I felt this today. I'm sure you did too, when the Republicans were passing their "let's kick poor people off a Medicaid" bill. Like, I don't know what else to do right now. I voted the right way. I protest. I do whatever it is I do. I know a lot of you do as well. And it feels like the people who are literally supposed to care about this shit are the only people who don't care about it. And they don't care if the rest of you suffer because they're Republicans and they wear giant cross necklaces everywhere they go, which is the universal sign for I don't give a shit about Jesus. So I don't know. Feels really frustrating right now. And I'm not sure what the answer is, but you got to find hope wherever you can get it. If you get a chance, there's a famous Facebook page, Humans of New York. They just did an interview with a guy they posted today where the guy's saying basically the same thing, but like looking for hope wherever you can find it, whether it's Zoran Mamdani or, any progressive who's like, I'm not taking this shit from Trump and I'm not taking it from Democrats either. And I'm going to fight as much as I can. I mean, kudos to those people, right? Oh, what else we got? Fox has always been in the Christian Taliban corner. They have. And again, like I said, it's not that this is surprising, but the way they went about it, where they just kind of hide the fact that this is a paid sponsorship, that's the part that surprised me a bit. Like, yeah, they have the fine print, but like they didn't even say it on air that it was a paid segment. Answers in Genesis isn't going to say that. That feels like you're trying to pull something over your audience, which I know it's Fox. It wouldn't be the first time, but July 6th is the protest day outside Ark Encounter. Thank you, Den. So, yeah, if you're not doing anything on, what is that, Sunday, and you live near Williamstown, Kentucky, check it out. As someone who gets easily distracted by light reflections in glasses, the new setup is way better for lighting. Thank you. I tried to fix it, and I'm still making revisions. And give me a couple weeks, and hopefully you'll see all new stuff everywhere. All right, I'm going to jump to another story. Give me 1 second here. You guys, I have so many tabs open. It's not even, it's crazy. Okay. Do you all remember this guy? That's Ryan Walters. He's the superintendent of public instruction in Oklahoma. He is just a Trump toady, will do anything possible to make Trump think he's awesome. Well, he's getting sued, and it's for the best reason because he absolutely deserves this. And I need to explain to you what he did that made people so angry and why they're suing him now. So basically, what happened with Ryan Walters is that sometime last year, he announced that they were going to revise the social studies standards in the entire state. And he wanted to make it, he announced this up front. He said he wanted to make it super, super Jesus-y. All right. Because his whole goal is to brainwash children. He doesn't hide this. And this is what he said at the time in the press release. Check this out. December 18th is the date here. The new standards are among the strongest in the country. Pro-America, pro-American exceptionalism, because if there's, I hate that phrase because every other country in the world is like, what the fuck is wrong with America right now? And I don't have a good answer for you, but we are not exceptional. And strengthen civics and constitutional studies, blah, blah, blah. They include Superintendent Walters' Bible curriculum recommendations and mention the Bible and its historical impact over 40 times. And then he even quotes himself in his press release. Oklahoma is putting the Bible and the historical impact of Christianity back in school. Like, all right, you're kind of saying this stuff out loud. You're not supposed to do that. So what did he actually do? What's supposed to happen is he's supposed to release the proposed standards to the public. And then the public gets a certain amount of days to weigh in on it, to complain about it, to make suggestions. There's a committee that revises all of this. And then the Board of Education for the state of Oklahoma has to approve it in a vote. That's the game plan. So when Ryan Walters released the standards, people started noticing there's a lot of crazy stuff in here that is not good for children. So here's an example. This is what would you teach grade 1? Well, for example, for grade 1, one of the things that Ryan Walters says they got to know is they got to explain the purpose and meaning of the Pledge of Allegiance and the significance of the phrase under God. I don't think he's expecting teachers to say, yeah, it was shoved in the pledge in 1954. They took that phrase, one nation, indivisible, and then divided us with religion. I don't think he's expecting anyone to say that. But you have to tell people why we say under God in the pledge. What else is in here? First graders would also have to, check this out. They have to explain the meaning of our motto, in God we trust, including the importance of religion to American people, which is weird because Americans, by and large, have been trending away from religion over the past 20, 30 years. So I don't know what that's all about. What about second graders? Check this out. Second graders have to identify stories from Christianity that influenced American colonists, founders, and culture, including the teachings of Jesus of Nazareth, which is hilarious because you know who doesn't give a shit about Jesus? Every elected Republican right now. Oh, you want me to help the poor? No, I'm going to take away their health coverage. But look at what the examples he gives. The Sermon on the Mount. That's the speech where Jesus says, "Help the least of these." Give to the poor, the hungry. And that's the one thing Republicans are not doing. And then it says the golden rule as if that's a Jesus original. Like, no, treat others the way you want to be treated. That was around long before the Jesus stuff happened. But that's what they wanted to teach second graders. It's a lot of this is very David Barton-esque. He's the pseudo historian that basically his entire career is going from church to church, from city council meeting to state legislatures everywhere, telling them that the Bible is part of American history, and he just makes shit up because he's a conservative Christian. You think he cares about lying? He does not. So he just lies to everyone about it, and then that becomes the gospel for a bunch of these conservatives. In 8th grade, this one's interesting. In 8th grade, kids have to learn, I don't know if you could see this one, I'll remove myself, evaluate the role of Judeo-Christian ideals in supporting colonial demands for independence, as exemplified by the Bible being a frequently cited authority by America's founders. The Bible's not a frequently cited authority. I know I've said this before. I'm not the first to say it. God, religion, appears twice in the U.S. Constitution, and both times it's preceded by the word no. Like, they are not citing the Bible in any of our founding documents. For high school students, the indoctrination gets even worse. This is something they want high schoolers to do. Describe how the Constitution of the United States was influenced by religion, morality, and the Bible as a frequently cited authority. Again, it was not. This one is also there. This is world history, and you're supposed to treat the Bible as like historical text. Look at this. This is in world history. Describe the central features of Christianity in ancient Rome, like monotheism. All right, fine. Using use of the Old and New Testaments, the influence of St. Paul, and the meanings and effects of Jesus of Nazareth's words as recorded by Matthew, as if what's written in the Bible, in the Gospels, is like a primary document that we can all just rely on. Like, no, that's not how any of this works. There's one other interesting thing to show you here. There was an elective class on 20th century totalitarianism, and it included this bit. Describe the Christian idea of the equality of souls, that we're all equal, the Christian ideal of charity, because no one other than Christians can be charitable, and the renunciation of worldly wealth, which, I don't know, have these people ever heard of Trump? So this is the sort of shit that Ryan Walters was trying to get social studies classes from kindergarten through high school to teach kids. It was completely messed up. So who wrote these standards? Because he didn't just sit in a room and do this himself. There was a 10-member committee that put together the social studies standards, and they included a co-founder of PragerU, the right-wing conspiracy YouTube channel, a representative from the Conservative American Enterprise Institute, the president of the Heritage Foundation, which is the group behind Project 2025. Only 3 of the people on the committee ever lived in Oklahoma, and no one on that committee was a public school teacher or an administrator or anything like that. So here's where it got worse. Earlier this year, in February, the Board of Education, now that the public got to weigh in and complain about it, and the executive committee is like, oh, we heard your complaints and we do not care about any of it. Well, the State Board of Education still had to vote on it. And by this time, Ryan Walters had gotten under the ire of the governor, Kevin Stitt. They're both Republicans. They're both like MAGA Republicans, but these guys hate each other. And Kevin Stitt replaced like half the Board of Education, thinking maybe they will stop Ryan Walters in a way. So whether or not they're going to vote for the social studies curriculum was like the first big test of that. And when they got to this meeting in February, what happened? Well, here's what happened. This is from Judd Legum of Popular Information. Walter's new social studies standards were approved, but many members have since said that Walters used deceptive tactics to pass new last-minute changes. He did not send the new standards. Oh, by the way, Ryan Walters decided all the things I just showed you, that was version 1.0. He secretly wrote up version 2.0, didn't tell anybody he changed it, and then sent that to the State Board of Education. And he sent it to them at 4 p.m. the day before the board's 9:30 a.m. meeting. So they didn't have time to look at his revisions. And some of the members said later they didn't even realize that the new standards were different than the earlier version they had previously reviewed. So Ryan Walters urged this Board of Education. He's like, you guys got to pass this now. The legislature needs a chance to approve it, so you got to do it now. You don't have time to read it. Very similar to the way Republicans just passed this anti-Medicaid bill today. Don't read it. Just take our word for it. It's fine. And so the Board of Education said, okay, I guess we'll do that because they're idiots. And they did it. And they passed it. And it was only after they passed it that people realized, wait a minute, the new standards are somehow even worse than the older ones. What do I mean by that? Well, here's an example of what they did. This is the old version, which again, it wasn't great, but this is the old version of the social studies standards. What do you do if you're trying to ask kids in 9th grade to describe the first Trump administration, right? Because they're young. What do you teach them about Trump 2016 to 2020, And this is what they used to say. Identify major policy issues, tax cuts, immigration, border security, and the expanding influence of social media. That's fair. Describe changes in foreign policy. Explain the responses to an impact of the death of George Floyd, including the Black Lives Matter movement. Interesting. Evaluate federal and private response to the COVID epidemic and the impact to global health. Examine issues related to the election of 2020 and its outcome, which is a way of saying discuss January 6th. And you know what? That is fair. All of that stuff, if I had to try to explain Trump 1.0 to a bunch of kids who were babies, to learn about it, this is a good overview of the big stuff. What did Ryan Walters do to this section in version 2.0? Here's that same section under 2.0. And the things I want to draw your attention to, look at C. Identify the source of the COVID-19 pandemic from a Chinese lab. Like, what? That's not established fact. He's just like, yeah, that's how it happened. Notice that anything about Trump policy matters. Foreign policy, that stuff is basically gone. Look at D. This is the one that got a lot of headlines. Identify discrepancies in 2020 election results. There were no discrepancies that actually made any sort of difference. This is like the Dinesh D'Souza propaganda movie that Ryan Walters is like, yeah, discuss how all that stuff happened during 2020 because there's no way Biden legitimately won. It's just election denial and conspiracy theories. This is what Walters is doing. It's completely messed up. I'll play this game again. Version 1.0, they said, what do you teach kids about the Biden presidency? And again, this is fair general stuff. Describe bipartisan efforts to address infrastructure. Describe U.S.-Mexico border crisis. Gaza-Israel conflict. Withdrawal from Afghanistan. Yes, fine. Discuss that stuff. What does Ryan Walters in version 2.0 want them to learn instead? He basically removed anything good that Biden was known for doing and focuses only on the bad stuff. Notice he doesn't even say Gaza in this version. It just says Hamas. Like, that's Ryan Walters for you. Remember that one passage, that totalitarian class where they said, talk about the renunciation of world wealth and the Christian ideal of charity? He just nixed that entire section altogether. So anyway, besides just changing all of this, another problem here is how are you going to get textbooks if you're offering this conservative, conspiracy-driven idea of U.S. history? And this is something that even lawmakers pointed out, this is from a former Oklahoma City Public Schools board member. He said standards that deviate too far from established facts can make it hard for textbook companies to write textbooks for the state. When you start deviating from the norm and the truth and start coming up with your own truths and throwing the Bible and election denying and all that, there's going to come a point where Oklahoma won't have a textbook publisher willing to align to our standards and sell a book. Because basically you would have to rewrite a textbook. And for what? For a handful of kids in Oklahoma? And then your reputation sucks because you're the company that put out conspiracy theories. So I don't want to do business with you if I live in a blue state. So it's just a horrible idea for that reason. So anyway, all of this stuff has already happened. I've made videos about it. The Oklahoma legislature had a chance to strike down these new standards, but the Republicans there said, no, we're not going to do anything to stop it. Surprise. So they let the standards go through. And so here's where we're at right now. The Ryan Walters conspiracy-driven version 2.0 social studies standards are now the law in Oklahoma, and they go into effect starting in August of this year when school is back in session. That's where we're at right now. And that is why a group of people have decided to sue Ryan Walters. And check this out. This is the lawsuit that was just filed. And this is filed in the state of Oklahoma. It's not a federal case here. And there's a bunch of plaintiffs, starting with Reverend Dr. Mitch Randall. And they're suing Ryan Walters. They're suing Oklahoma State Department of Education, the Board of Education, and all of these people that played a role in passing these standards. So they're going after everybody. And what does this lawsuit say? In general, and by the way, I should say, those plaintiffs are represented by Americans United for Separation of Church and State and a group called the Oklahoma Appleseed Center for Law and Justice. And here's what they say. They say they oppose their tax dollars being spent on education standards that promote religion and inaccuracies. And specifically, they point out that Ryan Walters and the Board of Education broke so many laws in implementing this set of standards. Specifically, version 2.0 was never released to the public so that they could scrutinize it before the Board of Education voted on it. That violates the state's Open Meeting Act. When the Board of Education voted on this set of standards without knowing what was in them, the board violated a law requiring it to have authority over academic standards. They didn't even know what they were voting for. By forcing teachers to spread lies, that violates a law requiring information taught to kids to be accurate. I was shocked too, but that's an Oklahoma law. Spreading Christian propaganda to kids violates a law, they say, requiring age-appropriate standards. And by promoting Christianity above other faiths and no faith, the standards violate the Oklahoma Constitution. Because again, you cannot seriously argue that Christianity is part of U.S. history the way Ryan Walters is doing it, when by and large, he's just shoving Christianity and bragging about doing that. So the lawsuit says, hey, courts, you need to invalidate these standards before school starts up again. We need to go back to the old version until they can come up with a new legal version that passes. And then, pay our legal fees also. One of my favorite things about the entire lawsuit is that this lawsuit quotes Ryan Walters extensively. Check this out. In the lawsuit, number 57, I'm not going to read all of this, but I'll read the beginning. In an April 1st, 2025 social media post, Walters stated, Oklahoma standing strong, ensuring students have access to the Bible as a vital cornerstone of our history and values. And he also depicted Oklahoma as participating in a movement to restore our nation's moral foundation. Which maybe you think that sounds nice, but that has nothing to do with social studies. In an April 29th, 2025 social media post, Walters stated, as part of these standards, the Bible will now be recognized as a foundational text, helping students understand its undeniable influence on our nation's history and values. And this goes on for a while. Like, look at this. He did an interview with the right-wing One American News, and they asked him, are you bringing the word? Are you bringing God? Are you bringing Jesus back to the classroom in Oklahoma? And Walters responded, we are. This goes on for a while. They just use the dude's words against him over and over because he has spent the past several months doing victory laps on the right-wing media circuit, telling everybody, look what I did. I got the Bible back in school, y'all. Give me credit for that. And so now they're using that information. They also quote him as spreading the election denial. So all this stuff is not based on history or facts. It's based on his own broken, smooth-ass brain. They also point out in this lawsuit that many historians do not treat the Bible as accurate history. They say the Bible contains numerous inconsistencies, that the accounts of certain characters in the Bible were written long after the apparent settings they describe, and scholars generally treat certain biblical accounts as literary works that were written to serve ideological and theological goals, not to document literal history. So, and I want to repeat, who's the primary plaintiff in this case? It's a reverend. I appreciate what that reverend said, by the way. This is Americans United here, but check out what this reverend said on the top, like right up here. Lead plaintiff, the Reverend Dr. Mitch Randall, who's an ordained Baptist minister. Look at what he said. As a Christian, I object to Oklahoma's new social studies standards that require teachers to deceive students by presenting inaccurate information as fact. This is a Christian minister. To reduce the Bible to a history book rather than treating it as theological text does a disservice to public school students, their families, their teachers, and those who consider the Bible to be a book of faith. Then look at this. As a member of the Muskogee Creek Nation, I'm especially bothered by my tax dollars supporting state-mandated religious instruction. It's a painful reminder of the forced religious proselytization my family members experienced in Native American boarding schools in Oklahoma. I urge the court to protect religious freedom for all Oklahomans and prevent implementation of these new standards. Wow. So right now, that's where we're at. We'll see if the courts do anything about this. I will remind you that Oklahoma, by one measure, is ranked 49th in the nation in education, and Ryan Walters is on a mission to make them number 50. He will not stop until they are the worst in the country. And one of the upsides to all of this, you may recall, this is not filed in federal court. This is filed in the state of Oklahoma, and the state Supreme Court has generally been okay when it comes to church-state separation. Remember when Oklahoma recently tried to launch the first in the nation religious taxpayer-funded charter school in the country? It was the Supreme Court of Oklahoma that shot that down. It was like a 6-1 decision. And by the way, the Attorney General of Oklahoma is the one that fought for them to strike it down. So that's another guy on the side of church-state separation. So they're filing this in Oklahoma. Hopefully, if this gets up to the state Supreme Court, they will say, yeah, you can't do this, Ryan, and strike it down, and we'll go back to normal. Hopefully, we will see. It's a lot of talking. I'm sorry. All right, what questions we got here before I move on to the next story? Oh my God, they took one nation indivisible and divided us by religion is so fucking good. Is that a quote or a Hammond original? I have heard that saying many times before. If you look up church-state separation podcast with my name on it, you will find a podcast I did many years ago where I documented over many hours the history of the Pledge of Allegiance. And that is one of the things that came up. Why did they insert under God in there? I'm going to do another story about the Pledge of Allegiance in just a second. I'm going to talk about it a little more. But yeah, there's a lot of reasons the Pledge of Allegiance is not a good thing to say, and why I would argue it's a prayer and not something that's patriotic at all. Walters wants to teach 6-year-olds about the Red Scare. Hey, it's never too early to break their brains, especially when they're moldable and not fully formed. Will you teach about the Jefferson Bible? Thomas Paine didn't have much use for religion either. That's a great point to make. A lot of those founding fathers were deists, and they were non-religious. And even when they were Christian, like Jefferson, they were not the type of Christian that is conservative today. And the Jefferson Bible, Google that if you've never heard of it. That's a perfect example of Thomas Jefferson just saying, I don't believe in most of this shit. Those are some hard questions. What if the student writes that Trump led an insurrection? So This is where it gets interesting because the standards I'm talking about here, this is the baseline. Teachers have to talk about this stuff, but school boards and school and teachers themselves have leeway in terms of what they teach and how they teach it. So if you have a good history teacher, they can actually give you the context you need, and they're not just following suit here. The problem, and this is not an Oklahoma thing, this is across the country, a lot of teachers don't actually know the subject areas they're teaching, not to the level that I wish they would. And that means the state standards are kind of their blueprint for what to teach. So if they don't tell you to talk about Black Lives Matter and George Floyd, those teachers may not do it at all. And that's part of the problem here. Ryan Walters is setting the basement of what should be taught, and a lot of teachers just follow that. And those are the students who need the most help. If you have a good teacher, they can negate all of the shit he's doing, but those are hard to find everywhere. You know what I mean? Can we fully appreciate the Bible as a brainwashing pamphlet for a failed system of government? I mean, the fact that Republicans want to replace the Constitution with the Bible, which very clearly is their goal because they do not care about the Constitution. And again, if they followed certain parts of the Bible, maybe we would be okay, but they're not. They're choosing the worst elements of it, cherry picking Bible verses to justify all the horrible stuff they're doing, and then telling everyone else we're immoral because we're not doing what they're doing. It is horrible. Oh, thank you for that donation, Dusty Dark Horse. Reverend Doctor got me thinking. Guest on Behind the Bastards. I don't know the podcast enough, but that guy is a very good spokesperson for this cause. This lawsuit, by the way, has a variety of religious leaders, public school teachers, non-religious parents, like people who have a stake in these state standards. Oh, thank you for gifting those memberships. That's very nice of you, LK. Oklahoma, bingo, drink. Thank you, Den. I'm going to move on to that pledge story I mentioned a second ago. Give me 1 second to pull it up here. All right. Let me show you a picture of this whoops, let me try that again. I'm getting used to everything. Let me show you a picture of this 14-year-old student. This is Danielle Calef. And she's in the news this month, or last month rather, because she's suing her Michigan public school district because her teacher basically criticized her, berated her, because this girl refused to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance because she was protesting how our government is supporting the Israeli genocide in Gaza. And, you know, if you're a 14-year-old student and you recognize what the Israeli government is doing, what the IDF is doing, and how the US government is helping them do it, you might be thinking, well, what do I do from a distance? I don't like it. I'm mad about it. My heart goes out to those innocent people who are getting slaughtered. What do I do? And this girl was like, well, one thing I can do is stay seated during the Pledge of Allegiance because my country doesn't deserve respect right now in that way. And she has every right to do this because that's how the pledge works. And no one has to say it. No one has to stand for it. And so back in January, Danielle is, by the way, she's an 8th grader at East Middle School in the Plymouth Canton Community Schools District. In January, she decided to just sit down during the Pledge of Allegiance. She didn't really explain why, but she did it, and she has every right to do it. In case you're wondering, and I alluded to this earlier during the live stream, why would people not want to stand during the Pledge of Allegiance? Because I always hear this every time I say something like this. There are people who say that is disrespectful. How dare you? People fought for this country, etc. There's a bunch of reasons historically why people don't want to stand up during the Pledge of Allegiance. The phrase under God pushes religion onto people who may not be religious. If you don't think we are a nation under God, you don't want to have to say that. Another reason is that the pledge says falsely that we have liberty and justice for all. Well, if you watch the news lately, you know damn well we don't have liberty and justice for all, especially if you are a person of color, if you're an immigrant or anyone like that. So historically, that's one reason a lot of Black students have protested saying the pledge. Another reason you might not like it is because when the pledge was written, I know I remember hearing that it was written by this socialist Baptist minister and stuff like that. Guess what? He wasn't a good guy. He wrote it because he really hated immigrants. And he's like, how dare you come from another country to this one and still like your home country? No, no, no. Put away your flag. Now you got to respect this American flag. So it's really an anti immigration uh, poem of sorts. It's all about pledging allegiance to our nation's flag and not the flag of whatever country you came from. And of course, at the end of all this, does the United States deserve admiration? Do you really want to pledge allegiance to this country right now under this leadership? I don't. Like, why would we want to pledge allegiance to a nation that is so often a global embarrassment and kind of the epicenter for making shit worse? So, none of this, by the way, none of this matters. If the girl didn't want to say the pledge because she didn't feel like it, that's all you need. So she stayed seated during the pledge. And according to what we have now found out, her teacher, Carissa Serrano, admonished and publicly humiliated the girl when she did this. Specifically, and this is from the lawsuit itself, it says, check this out. This is number 14 in this lawsuit that I'll show you. When the girl, Danielle, we know her name, declined to stand or recite the pledge, defendant Serrano disrupted the class and admonished her in the presence of her classmates. Serrano told Danielle that remaining seated was disrespectful, that Danielle was specifically disrespectful to U.S. military forces and the flag, and that she should stand. Danielle refused to stand. So her teacher doesn't get it. Her teacher doesn't know the law, but the student does. So district officials, after Danielle complained about this, I don't know if she told her parents and they complained or she personally complained, but they complained to the school, to the administrators. And after that, they soon did two things. They sent Serrano, the teacher, a corrective action notice, basically a warning saying, don't do this again. And they also held a staff meeting to remind teachers of the law. And that's good. Like, if that's what they did and they stuck with it and took it seriously, we would not be in this position right now. But apparently they did it and they're like, good, we did our job. Now we're done with this. And then guess what happened? Danielle decided not to stand for the pledge again, and her teacher flipped out again. And then Danielle did it a third time, and her teacher flipped out a third time. And at this point, guess what happened now? This is according to the ACLU of Michigan. Here we go. When on one occasion, Danielle approached her teacher, this is the third time, by the way, after class. She approached her teacher after class privately to explain why she did not want to stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance, which, by the way, she doesn't have to give anyone an explanation for this, but she did. The teacher responded by saying, since you live in this country and enjoy its freedom, if you don't like it, you should go back to your country. By the way, for all I know, Danielle was born in the United States. So this teacher is not just ignorant of the law. This teacher is a bigot. What the hell is going on with this teacher? But, like, who's being disruptive and disrespectful? It's the teacher. It's not the student. So after all this happened, it took a giant toll on the girl. And this is from their lawsuit as well. Look at number 20 here. As a result of Serrano's actions, Danielle suffered extensive emotional and social injuries. These include, among other things, inability to sleep, recurring nightmares, adoption of a more guarded demeanor, high levels of stress. Her weakened emotional state has compromised her physical health, suffered what her pediatrician, because she has a pediatrician because she's still a kid, described as the worst case of pneumonia that physician had seen in more than a year. Danielle has sought out and relied on therapy to cope with these circumstances. In addition to the emotional injuries, Danielle has had to cope with friends who want to distance themselves from her because of these incidents. The consequence has been isolation during a period when contact with peers is highly valued and necessary for her well-being. The impact has negatively affected her academic performance, a student with a nearly perfect record. So this teacher, has destroyed this child in many ways. And you could argue any one of these things, maybe it doesn't seem like a big deal, but when you look at it in totality, it's like, Over what? Because the girl didn't want to stand for the pledge? Why are we mad about this? And you realize it's the result of a teacher who didn't know the law, a teacher who took her ignorant rage out on a kid who did nothing wrong, and an administration that didn't take this matter seriously enough to actually put a stop to it when it was going on. So at the time, a group called the Arab American Civil Rights League, they sent the school a letter saying, "What the hell are you doing by letting this happen?" And look at this part they sent. This is back in February. "This matter is not just about one student. It's about upholding the fundamental principles of respect, equality, and a safe learning environment for all. If we allow such behavior to go unchecked, what message are we sending to our students and the broader community? Schools must be places of learning, inclusivity, and respect, not environments where discrimination is tolerated or ignored." And they wanted a response from the district saying, "Here's what we're going to do to make sure this stuff stops." And guess what? The district finally responded to that letter. This is at the end of February. This is from the superintendent of that district. And look what the superintendent said. They're like, "Look, you guys, as soon as we became aware of the allegation, the teacher involved was immediately placed on leave. Then, following a review and investigation, appropriate action was taken consistent with our school procedures and protocols." Okay, they said that, but like, what does that actually mean? They said the teacher's placed on leave. Is it paid leave? Is it unpaid leave? Is the teacher fired or not fired? I went to look on the district's website. The teacher is no longer listed on there, but the school did not say we fired her because we're not putting up with this shit. And everyone deserves that explanation. I want to know what the district did. If they fired her, I don't need her personnel information. Just say this is unacceptable. We investigated it and found that, yeah, this teacher did the wrong thing and failed to correct it even after we warned her, so we kicked her ass out the door. Say that. They also pointed out that we took corrective action. Like, well, what did you do? Like, what appropriate action did you take? Because as far as I can tell, you didn't do anything because the teacher was still punishing the kid over this. So the district's response was not very helpful, right? So because of that, the ACLU of Michigan and the Arab Civil Rights League, they are now suing the district and the teacher herself. And they're basically saying the district either failed to follow up, supervise, monitor, and or investigate what that teacher did. They didn't really take any implementation when it comes to policies, training, other procedures. So as far as we know, and as far as they know, they're like, we don't know what you did, but it's clearly not enough, and you don't seem like you're taking this seriously right now. So we're filing a lawsuit to force you to do the right thing because we can't rely on you to do it on your own. That's what they're filing this lawsuit for. And they say the girl's First Amendment rights were violated, that they want the district to never prevent kids from staying seated during the pledge. And it bothers me that they need a judge to fix this, because you would hope the administrators at this district would fix it on their own. But they had a shot. They didn't do enough. So the only upside here is Danielle is entering high school next year, and she's leaving the building where all this happened. And hopefully she can make a new set of friends who actually respect the fact that she's this badass kid. And I hope her teachers at the high school respect the law and celebrate students who know their rights. All right. I'll stop there. What questions we got here? Brave student. Absolutely. Very brave. Like, can you imagine being in 8th grade and trying to do this back in the day? Scary. She's in Salvador now. She's not. No. She's in Michigan. I hope the Trump administration is not trying to deport her and her family, though I wouldn't put it behind them because she's kind of brown. This is very encouraging to see someone so young taking a stand. Absolutely. It's always so encouraging when you hear about kids who are doing the right thing for the right reasons. And usually we only hear about it because the adults in the building don't realize it's totally okay to do this. In fact, I would argue it's more patriotic to stay seated for the pledge because you demand better from our country than what the country is giving you. Yeah, you need take a knee during the national anthem because you want the country to live up to its ideals. You're not just going to blind faith go along with the crowd because everything's perfect. Like, these are people, the people protesting are the ones who want better. Well, as an Army veteran with 4 combat tours, it is our First Amendment right not to stand or recite the pledge. Thank you. Yes, you understand. Everyone has a right to protest. That is what the freedom we are fighting for when people in the military are doing that. The idea that it's disrespectful to exercise your First Amendment rights, like, what the hell is that? Do other countries make students say some sort of pledge? Yeah, like North Korea, Saudi Arabia. Like, if I told you any of those countries, they make their kids say a pledge to their country every day, everyone, hands down, would be like, well, that's brainwashing. Yeah. All right, I'm jumping to the next story. You could sign up for the newsletter at Friendly Atheist. I'm taking a drink really quick. Oh, this is a sad, frustrating story, but I want to share this with you. This guy right here, his name is Mark Richards, and this guy was teaching music for over 2 decades at a place called St. Francis Xavier School in Metairie, Louisiana. And I looked at the school's website. Their mission is to unite church and family. They want to bring everyone together. And by all accounts, this guy was an excellent teacher. And 2 years before he began working at this particular Catholic school, Mark met another man named John Messinger, and they eventually got married in 2014. Now, you know where I'm going with this. This is a problem if you work at a Catholic school, because Catholic schools usually, always, require their staff members to sign morality clauses that basically say you got to accept Catholic doctrine. So if you're a staffer, you're not allowed to have an abortion. You can't be in a same-sex marriage. You can't be in a same-sex relationship. You cannot be trans because the Catholic Church says trans people don't exist. Now, what do you do if you're Mark Richards and you're like, but I like my job at the school, and yeah, everyone knew I was gay, but now I met somebody and we want to get married, and we did get married. What do you do if you're this guy? Well, he decided, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and keep signing the contract every year because everyone at the school, he said, everyone at the school, students know I'm gay. The staffers know I'm gay. The administrators at the school know I'm gay. And a lot of them knew he was in a relationship / married as well. And none of them care because by and large, Americans who are Catholic are generally way better about this stuff than the Vatican. But he knew he was doing something wrong by signing the contract, but he signed it. And the way he described it is he's like, everyone kind of knows the contract is a wink and a nudge. Like, you're supposed to do this. We got to tell you to act this way. But listen, if you do anything that the church considers sinful, that we all know is not a sin, we're totally fine looking the other way. That's how he always took it. And that kind of makes sense too, because the only sins the Catholic Church and Catholic schools tend to go after are the visible ones. So if you posted a picture on Facebook of you and your same-sex partner getting married, they can point to that and say you're fired. Or if you have an abortion and you publicly talk about it, you can get fired. But if you say nothing and you quietly get an abortion and don't tell anybody, they're not going to do anything to you. If you're dating someone who is also, a same-sex person, they don't care because they wouldn't know. Why would they know unless you advertise it? So this guy continued to sign the contract and no one cared. He's a great music teacher. Everything's fine. And then, this is where it gets really sad. In 2023, his partner, John, dies of a heart attack. Just an awful time. And what Mark said is that everyone at the school, the students, the staffers, they were, and I'm quoting here, they were very sympathetic and supportive. They knew those two guys were married. They didn't care what the church says about that. Love is love. One of their favorite teachers lost his spouse. Their humanity overrode the archaic bigotry of the Catholic Church. And I want to show you this. at the time, there was an obituary written about this guy, John Messinger. And look at what they wrote on this obituary. He is survived by his husband of 22 years, Mark Richards, of New Orleans, Louisiana. And that's just one sentence hidden in that first paragraph in the obituary for this man. So, why am I telling you all this? Because recently, and for no apparent reason, some parent found that obituary I just showed you. They were like, wait a minute, Mark Richards, that's the man at this school. And then I'm guessing they sent an email to the administrators at the school and like the archdiocese in Louisiana that oversees this particular school. And they were like, this man was married to another man. Why is he working at the school? And even if the teachers at the school and even if the principal of the school could look the other way for a long time, when you like tattle and you CC the archbishop, now you can't really hide from it anymore, right? And so after Mark Richards was outed by this parent, and we don't know who did it and we don't know why they did it. When a reporter asked Mark Richards, why do you think a parent did this? He said, I don't know. Maybe that person is disgruntled. I don't know why. Did he give a kid a bad grade and the parent got mad and wanted revenge? Who is even looking at an old obituary and finding that line in there? Like, you don't just stumble upon that. You are looking for reasons to punish this guy. And for what? I have no clue. Just heartless. But that is all it took. After 2 decades working at this school, Mark Richards was unceremoniously fired. Look at this headline from The Guardian about this story. U.S. Catholic school fires teacher after husband's obituary reveals his marriage to a man. Like utterly heartless behavior from the Catholic school. So here's something I really appreciated. After he was outed, after he was fired, Mark Richards still had access to his school email address. And from what I could gather, he quickly sent out an email to everybody. Because before word got out that, hey, your favorite teacher just got fired, and students start asking, wait a minute, why did he get fired? He must have done something really terrible, right? In order to get fired. He sent out an email basically saying to everybody, and I'm quoting here. Oh, let me make sure I find this. Yeah, this is what he sent to everyone. I have not been in violation of the morality clause for the last 2 years, and no one can find any incident of my acting inappropriately with anyone, let alone a student. Basically saying, I didn't do anything that's criminal. My husband died 2 years ago. I haven't been with anyone since. But in case you're wondering, he did admit, yeah, I was married to a guy for a number of years. Now I'm not. But let me be the first to tell you why I got fired. And in response to that, what did the school say? Here's what the school's response was. After much thought and prayerful consideration, we determined that Mr. Mark, that's what they called him, would not be given a contract for the upcoming year. While we can confirm this, as Mr. Mark already made this announcement, we cannot, by law, comment any further on the reasons behind this decision other than to note that the email you received did not provide a fully accurate description of the employment situation. We feel it important to state that this decision is final and will not be revisited. 2 things about that. This idea that, yeah, we know he wrote you all an email, but he didn't tell you everything. That suggests he did something shady and scandalous, which is deeply unfair because there's no evidence that he did anything wrong. The other thing is, I love that statement, we cannot by law comment any further, as if the Catholic Church gives a shit about the law. Like all these Supreme Court cases we've seen this year are like, what? Catholic schools saying the law doesn't apply to us. We're the church. We have deeply held, sincerely held religious beliefs. They override the law. But here they're like, oh, sorry, the law says we can't tell you why we fired a beloved teacher. Now the law matters, apparently. By the way, when Mark Richards emailed the whole school basically and told them why he got fired, this is how he ended his email. Teaching your children has been one of the joys of my life, and I treasure the memories. That's the guy they got rid of. So again, what could the school have done? They could have confirmed why they fired him. They could have just said, look, this guy broke the morality clause. We don't like it, but them's the rules. Sorry. They didn't do anything like that. So the bottom line is that a really great teacher was fired because Catholic school officials found out about his secret past as a great husband to another guy. That's why they fired him. Now, let me shift gears for a second because this is a heartbreaking story. I feel so bad for Mark Richards, and I feel bad for the students who love him. But I want to be clear, the school has every right to fire people for violating their contract. This is not about the legality of getting rid of him. They have the legal right to do it. This is about the ethics. The Catholic Church has no leniency for employees in a healthy, loving, same-sex relationship, but you know they will bend over backwards to protect sex predators. In fact, let me show you the first paragraph of that Guardian article. You got to see this because, oh my God, it's incredible. Check this out right over here. Let me pull this up. First paragraph of this Guardian article. A longtime music teacher at a Catholic school in the New Orleans area recently lost his job when it was revealed to an evidently disgruntled parent that he was another man's widower. Look at this. Igniting a scandal within an archdiocese that has otherwise largely been occupied with trying to reorganize its finances in federal bankruptcy court after its clergymen spent decades sexually molesting children. Beautiful, beautiful opening paragraph right there. Also in this Guardian article, St. Francis is one of numerous Archdiocese of New Orleans affiliates that are being counted on to contribute to what is expected to be a 9-figure settlement resolving a bankruptcy protection case filed by Archdiocese leaders in 2020. Those officials made that Chapter 11 bankruptcy filing mainly in an attempt to dispense with hundreds of clergy molestation claims dating back decades as affordably as possible. As of Sunday, the most recent settlement offer was for the Archdiocese, its affiliates, and its insurers to pay between $180 million and $230 million to about 600 abuse survivors. So that's what the Archdiocese is dealing with right now. But you know who they're really going after? A gay choir teacher. Because what? A gay man in the arts? Never. These people are just the worst. Okay, there's also, I'm mad about this as well. I then saw, and part of me felt really grateful about this, I saw this petition launched by people who really love Mark Richards. Shows support for Mr. Mark by asking the Archdiocese to revisit the morality contract. It has 5,200 signatures right now. Look at that beautiful sign over here. Don't pray the music away. Bring back Mr. Mark. That is beautiful. I love that sentiment. But, you guys, look at this. Look at what these people are writing. It is imperative that the Archdiocese revisits their morality contracts. The current Pope Leo XIV has advocated for inclusion and understanding, yet the existing terms fall short of these values. Updating these contracts to reflect the Pope's more inclusive perspective would be a step in the right direction towards embracing diversity and love for all, embodying genuine Christian values. Oh my God, you guys are adorable and you have no idea what's going on. I'll speak more on that, but I want to show you one other thing. Local parents also spoke to a local news station and the same thing happened. Look at these people. This is one parent. I would like to see the morality clause change. I am activated. I don't know if she meant aggravated, whatever. I would like the line regarding homosexuality in the morality clause that educators sign to be removed. Your identity is not your morality. I hope we have a voice in this. It's just emotional. Another parent. Being homosexual is not a crime. ... Why would the church do that? Why would the church say that? That's not what Jesus would do. It's not fair. It's just about human dignity to me. That's what it comes down to. Didn't the Pope say homosexuality is not a crime? And then a third parent. I would like them to really change the morality clause with the Archdiocese. I mean, we're not angry with the school at all. But this morality clause within the archdiocese just has to be reviewed because it's a violation of human rights. To me, it's a social injustice at this point. Okay, listen. I love the sentiment. I love that these people are fighting for this teacher that they absolutely adore. But oh my God, do none of these people go to. Hello, I'm still here. Sorry about that. I know I disappeared for a second. Give me 1 second to come back. Den, do a little wave if you see me and hear me. Okay, I see you. Thank you. Give me a second to pull that back up. I have no idea where I disappeared to. The internet was doing internety things. There we go. So as I was saying, the problem with all these parents talking about all this, saying all this stuff is they do not seem to understand that the problem here is with the Catholic Church itself. It's this, they can't remove the morality clause. Going after gay people is like church law. The church is not going to change on this. The problem is Catholicism. The problem is the Catholic Church. These people are like, you guys, come on. We all know this rule is stupid, right? No. Why are you part of the Catholic Church if you think this is wrong? And so that's part of it. That's part of it. They also brought up things like, here's what they don't know. Do they not know that the Catholic Church's position on same-sex couples is that homosexual acts are intrinsically disordered? That's what the Catechism teaches. Pope Francis, they said like the last Pope was inclusive and the new Pope was inclusive. Do you know what Pope Francis says about gay people? Yeah, he said, who am I to judge? Him, he's the Pope. You know what he said about gay people? He said being gay is not a crime, but he said that same-sex unions may not simply be equated with marriage. He said he believes there are absolutely no grounds for considering homosexual unions to be in any way similar or even remotely analogous to God's plans for marriage and family. That's what Pope Francis said about gay couples. And Pope Leo XIV, who, even though he hasn't spoken about this publicly yet, presumably believes all the same stuff. These people are not going to undo their anti-gay bigotry. Like, Why do the parents not realize that the problem here is not with school officials, but with the church itself? And we know the answer to this. It's because a lot of parents send their kids to Catholic school because they're culturally Catholic, or they think the education will be good, but they don't really give any thought to church doctrine itself. They assume religion is a virtue, but they are very ignorant of where the Catholic Church actually stands when it comes to matters of morality. Like, the same can be said of many Catholic school teachers. They take the jobs for a number of reasons that have absolutely nothing to do with their strong Catholics. They take it because they need money and they want to be a teacher, and maybe they don't have a teaching certificate, but the Catholic Church school will hire them. There's a bunch of reasons, but my point is, these people don't get that the Catholic Church and the popes and the bishops and the archbishop, they're all anti-gay bigots. They all hate trans people. They all think abortion should be banned in any form all the time. Catholics who just call American Catholics, by and large, are fine with gay people. They're fine with abortion rights, but the church and the Vatican is not. So if these parents are actually mad at this school for firing Mr. Mark, you know what they need to do? You don't do a petition asking them to change their morality clause, because the archdiocese is not going to do that. Here's what you do instead. You honor Mr. Mark by walking away from the archdiocese, find a different church, and then remove your kids and your tuition dollars from St. Francis Xavier School and send your kids to a public school or a different private school where who teachers love and marry is not used as a weapon against them. That's what you do if you actually give a shit about this story. You don't just complain and ask them to change the morality clause because isn't that what Jesus would do? No, the Catholic Church very much is against this. And if you don't know it now, and you clearly don't, well, now you do. So what are you going to do about it? It boggles my mind that these decent people do not realize that the problem is not with the administrators. It's with their literal religion. Get out of that religion if it's not serving you well. Okay, I will stop with this story. Sorry for that weird break in the middle of all of it. What questions we got here? The Church of Hemant. That's what everyone should join. I keep telling everybody. No one listens to me. What else we got? He has returned. Yes, I am back. Our Hemant, reason be thy name. Thy science come, his facts be done on earth as it is in the universe. I love it. Everyone, repeat this 3 times a morning. And then go to patreon.com/Hemant. If the school knew he was gay and accepted the contract for some number of years, it seems like the school would be found to have waived its rights to enforce a contractual clause. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know the truth of that. However, I will say, I feel like the administration, even if to a person they were like, dude, we know you're married to a guy. We don't care. Whatever. Just do your job. We don't know who else is going to take this position. I get that. But at the same time, if the archdiocese is like, did you know he was gay and in a relationship? You know, those administrators are like, no, we didn't know that at all. But now that we do know, we're totally firing this guy. Because again, lying is okay if you're doing it in the name of Jesus. There's that Christian love again, getting a person fired after his husband just died. Yep, that's the conservative Christian love that is embodied by Republicans everywhere. Funny part is almost all of those kids will now question their religion, not because of him, but because of the school. I hope so. I hope those kids, and I hope their parents realize the problem wasn't Mr. Mark. The problem is not a teacher in a happy same-sex relationship. It's a religion and a church that tells you there's something wrong with those people while they are looking the other way during actual criminal acts against children. I like it. Keep repeating it. Funny, we did that one. In plain speak, they're probably cutting the music program due to lack of funds and didn't want to pay his retirement. I actually don't know how much they pay in retirement. Catholic schools do not usually give you a pension. But I think I have read articles in which the school said, we're not cutting the music program. We're going to keep it going. We will find somebody else. So I don't think that's the reason they're going to get rid of him. They're getting rid of him because he was in a gay marriage. That's it. They're bigots. The Catholic Church is bigoted. That's the answer. All right, I'm moving on to a different story. I'm going to get rid of 300 tabs. All right, let me jump ahead here. All right. There was a very disturbing Supreme Court ruling this week. It was a 6-3 ruling, all the conservatives against all the liberals. And it was in a case called Mahmoud v. Taylor. And basically, the bottom line is that the conservatives on the court say that parents who don't want their kids reading books in school with LGBTQ characters and themes can just opt out due to their religious beliefs. And the implications of that decision are staggering. So basically, conservative parents sued this school district in Maryland, the Montgomery County Board of Education. They sued. They are Muslims and Catholics, conservative, both of them. They didn't want to expose their kids to the reality that they live in a pluralistic society with people who may not believe what they believe or love who they think you should love or fit a particular gender mold. Right? So they said the Montgomery County Board of Education was undermining their faith by reading books in class that treated same-sex people, gay people and trans people as normal. And in fact, look at what the decision actually says. This is the majority's ruling here. I think this is Sam Alito writing this. Yeah, let me pull this up here. So they read books in school that have gay characters. But look at this. The books are unmistakably normative. Yeah, they treat gay people as normal. They are designed to present certain values and beliefs as things to be celebrated, and certain contrary values and beliefs as things to be rejected. Jesus. Take, for example, the message sent by the books concerning same-sex marriage. And this goes on for a while, saying they had a gay couple in one of the books, and the storybooks present same-sex weddings as occasions for great celebration and suggest that the only rubric for determining whether a marriage is acceptable is whether the individuals concerned love each other. That's the reason Alito is mad. Now, the book in question that he is talking about has a character who has a same-sex wedding. You know who celebrates that in the book? The dude's family and friends. It didn't say, hey, reader, you better be happy for us too. No, it's like the dude's family is happy that he's getting married. But because they didn't present, I don't know, the alternative side, they didn't present the Westboro Baptist Church protesting at the wedding. Alito's like, this is not fair and balanced the way I like it. Right? In Sonia Sotomayor's dissent, she actually said, this decision says that being exposed to the very idea that LGBTQ people exist. Look at this. Whoops. Let me pull this back for a second. Yeah, look at what Sotomayor wrote in her dissent. Exposing students to the message that LGBTQ people exist and that their loved ones may celebrate their marriages and life events, the majority says, is enough to trigger the most demanding form of judicial scrutiny. What basically, that's judge speak for what the hell are you people doing? And the irony is that even if certain books were approved by the Board of Education in Maryland, in that county, for use in the classroom, we don't know how the books were being used or how often they were read or what conversations occurred because of them. Like the SCOTUS conservatives, the Supreme Court conservatives have a habit of inventing facts to fit the conclusion they want to achieve. And they refuse to see like the legal record of what happened to establish any of that. They have a history of doing this. But the bottom line now is that this decision lets parents remove their kids from the classroom if something they're going to be taught might offend their religious sensibilities. Now, how does that get implemented? I have no idea. Like, how can a school district know what religious beliefs everyone has? How can public education even occur if parents have veto power over every aspect of every lesson? Like, is every teacher supposed to send out like the curriculum? This is what we're going to do this week. This is what we're going to read. And by the way, if you have a problem with it, because, I mean, it's not like the parents have read any of these books, but if you have a problem with it, you let me know and you can remove your kids from the classroom. And by the way, if we live in a really rural area where a lot of the parents might be of the same religion, then I don't know, a majority of the classroom will be out of class. And now I can't even teach the class because most of the kids are gone. Like, you cannot let parents micromanage what happens in the classroom. That's what the Board of Education is for. Their job is to say, yeah, we looked at the curriculum, we approve it, and that's it. It's bad enough we allow parents to opt kids out of like sex education. But like in some cases, maybe there's reason to take kids out. But reading a book that does not tell them you must love gay marriage, like, you've got to be kidding me. It's ridiculous. And Sam Alito actually made it sound like he actually has a solution for this. Check this out. This is what Alito wrote in his decision. The petitioners have shown that there are, here we go, specifically, until all appellate review in this case is completed. So until, if you want to argue this, go for it. But for now, the board should be ordered to notify the parents in advance whenever one of the books in question or any other similar book is to be used in any way, and allow them to have their children excused from that instruction. Like, there's no feasible way to actually do this. I appreciate what Vox's Ian Millhiser wrote about this. And I want to show you that here. Where did it go? Here we go. This is what Ian wrote summarizing this case. The upshot is that a school may also need to warn parents if a teacher wants to read from a Harry Potter book, because those books are about magic, or if they want to teach a lesson about a famous pacifist like Martin Luther King Jr. Schools may even need to warn parents if any of their children's teachers are women, just in case a parent objects on religious grounds to women having achievements outside of the home. If anything that happens in a school might violate your religious sensibilities, then it's no good anymore. And that's ridiculous. Like, there is no telling which parts of an education could offend someone just because religious conservatives are offended by damn near everything all the time. Right? And that said, the way the decision is written, I don't know, having gay characters alone or trans characters alone may not be reason enough to object. Like, apparently the line is that you're not allowed to celebrate their identities. So what happens if there's a novel with the gay character, but you don't draw attention to it? Or there's a trans character, but no one talks about it? Is that okay, or is that not okay? Can a religious parent say, what, you acknowledge the existence of trans people? I object. I'm going to remove my kid from class. Like, and what counts as celebrating who they are? Because what happens if you're reading a novel and a character is trying to come to grips with the fact that they are gay, and they're going through all the emotions you go through when you realize that? Does that count as celebrating it or advocating for it? Who knows? And what if some characters in a book are happy for their gay or trans friends, as any decent friend would be? I have no clue. Like, the ruling is so vague that the only way to avoid any sort of legal entanglement is to just never use any books that have LGBTQ characters. Just erase them out of the curriculum, which, again, that's kind of what social conservatives want. And so when this case was being considered, one thing that I was pleased to see is that a number of church-state separation groups called out why this decision would be a problem. So, for example, this is from Americans United for Separation of Church and State. This is what they wrote to the Supreme Court before the decision was handed down, urging them not to do the thing they eventually did. This opt-out system sought by petitioners would harm religious freedom in at least three ways. It would undermine public schools' ability to foster tolerance, ultimately leading to a less tolerant citizenry. Second, it would stigmatize the kids who are not opted out and serve to divide students along religious lines. Third, it would force many schools to tailor their curricula to the religious views of some parents. Yeah, those would be a problem. They also said this, where did it go? Right here. There we go. In the real world, of course, there is no opting out. Exposure to contrary ideas, even ones we vehemently disagree with, is simply a fact of life in a pluralistic society. But if petitioners succeed, public school students would never be exposed to ideas they disagree with. Instead, they could simply be pulled out of classrooms anytime a conflict arose. I mean, yes, those are legitimate things to be concerned about. After the decision was handed down, this is what AU said in response. Rather than implement an unworkable system of opt-outs to certain books or lessons, public schools are more likely to strike content from the curriculum that could be challenged, which is the ultimate goal of the Christian National, is backing this case. What's next? Objecting to books with single moms? Demanding opt-outs from students learning about evolution? Objecting to LGBTQ plus teachers present in the classroom? LGBTQ plus students? We need a national recommitment to church-state separation. Our public schools and our democracy depend on it. There was also a similar amicus brief written by a group of atheists, the American Atheists, the Secular Student Alliance, and the Secular Coalition for America. And they argued that all kinds of subjects would suffer if the plaintiffs got their way. Check out what they wrote here. A young Earth creationist parent may object to world history lessons that examine or even acknowledge any events occurring more than approximately 6,000 years ago, or object to their child taking high school physics because they would introduce them to principles that undergird radiocarbon dating, which again show that the world existed more than 6,000 years ago. A Christian Scientist parent may object to instruction concerning the germ theory of disease. A Catholic parent might object to lessons on capitalism and economics as promotion of greed. This goes on. A Mormon parent might want to opt their child out of significant portions of American history courses that talk about how people migrated here because it contradicts the Book of Mormon. You get the idea. This goes on for a while. This decision could harm everybody. And after the ruling came out, this is what American Atheist said. Today's ruling will serve as fodder for the far religious right's nationwide campaign to restrict students' access to inclusive and informative materials. Approximately 90% of kids and teens in the U.S. attend public schools, and an abundance of research has demonstrated the benefits of multicultural education and culturally responsive practices. I got one more for you. It's from the Freedom from Religion Foundation, and this is what they said in their amicus brief, saying, we are worried that kids are not going to be able to read certain material. Look at this. To Kill a Mockingbird portrays Southern Baptists in a less than favorable light. So are parents going to object to that? Right? What about Lord of the Flies, or the Grapes of Wrath? They used to have biblical themes. What if they object to that? Content in Catcher in the Rye or Les Miserables could offend religious sensibilities. But then again, so could the subject matter in more or less any of Shakespeare's classics. Macbeth has witches and cesarean section birth. There's miscegenation, people who don't want to see mixed race stuff in Othello. And the Iliad and the Odyssey portray ancient Greek deities. So you can go after Charlotte's Web, Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day. Like, you could go after everything. And after the decision, this is what the Freedom from Religion Foundation said. This ruling threatens to give any religious parent veto power over public school curricula. If this dangerous logic is carried forward, it could unravel decades of progress toward inclusive education and equal rights. It has grave ramifications for the teaching of evolution. Public schools must be grounded in facts and reality and not subject to religious censors. So all of that is so true. And this is something Sonia Sotomayor laid out in her dissent, which I wish it wasn't the dissent, but this is what she wrote. I wish this was actually the ruling itself. But look at what Sotomayor wrote. The result will be chaos for this nation's public schools. Requiring schools to provide advance notice and the chance to opt out of every lesson plan or story time that might implicate a parent's religious beliefs will impose impossible administrative burdens on schools. And the harm won't be borne by educators alone. Kids will suffer. Classroom disruptions, absences may well inflict long-lasting harm on students' learning and development. And all of that is accurate. She also said this. Where did it go? The court's ruling, in effect, thus hands a subset of parents the right to veto curricular choices long left to locally elected school boards. Because I cannot countenance the court's contortion of our precedent and the untold harms that will follow, I dissent. And she also pointed out what a lot of those other people said. Where does this slippery slope end in this case? Look at this. Books expressing implicit support for patriotism, women's rights, interfaith marriage, consumption of meat, immodest dress, countless other topics may conflict with sincerely held religious beliefs. Imagine a children's picture book that celebrates the achievements of women in history, including female scientists, politicians, astronauts, and authors. Perhaps the book even features a page that states girls can do it all. That message may be directly contrary to the religious principles that a parent wishes to instill in their child. So she knows that there's a slippery slope here. She read those amicus briefs. And she says it's not just books that are at issue here. If a teacher has on her desk a picture of her and her wife, is that advocacy? Is that celebration? Can a religious parent demand to remove their child from that classroom? There's no way to distinguish those cases from the one at hand. So it's a win for conservative bigots. It's a loss for public education. It's another blow to church-state separation. Because as soon as you let religious parents dictate what their kids can and cannot learn in a public school, it hurts everybody. Like LGBTQ themed books may be first on the chopping block, but there's nothing that's safe. What about a book that talks about vaccines? What about a textbook that talks about vaccines or evolution or anything like that? Who knows what's going to happen? I was reading articles about this, and a guy named Brent Leatherwood, who's the chair of the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission. I hope I'm saying, Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission of the Southern Baptist Convention. He gave a quotation, and this is what he said: "Schools are for education, not indoctrination." This is the way he was celebrating what the court decided, but he has it completely backwards. Schools were trying to educate kids, but now these religious parents get to basically get veto power over LGBTQ books. That is indoctrination. It's just religious indoctrination, and Leatherwood is okay with that. You know what I mean? This is how Christian nationalists are now dictating public policy for everybody, because they treat neutrality as oppression. That's it. That's the bottom line. The Supreme Court's right-wing majority has made it clear that neutral laws are no longer acceptable if it clashes with the religious whims of conservative bigots. One other thing about this case. In the ruling, Alito had pictures, a couple of pages of pictures from the children's book in question. And one thing I appreciated is that Sonia Sotomayor was like, before you all read this ruling, she said Alito is basically cherry picking pages. Look at the very top of this page. Because the majority selectively excerpts the book in order to rewrite its story, readers are encouraged to go directly to the source reproduced below. Basically, Alito said these people are celebrating a gay marriage, and that's not fair. And Sonia Sotomayor is like, go look at my dissent, because at the very back of it, she goes on for a while, but at the very end of this decision, she has the entire book reproduced here so people can read it and see this book is not about celebrating a same-sex wedding. That's just one element of what happens. It's really about a child's journey. And so she posted the entire book there so everyone could read the entire thing. By the way, she did the exact same thing with, do you remember when Neil Gorsuch wrote the decision in the Kennedy case about the football coach who wanted to pray at midfield after games? Gorsuch, writing his ruling, was like, this man got fired when all he wanted to do was a quiet prayer at midfield. And Sonia Sotomayor is like, you're lying about the facts. In fact, here are pictures of him doing his fake quiet prayer, and he's surrounded by a mob of people. He wasn't fired. Like, she has to lay out how the conservatives are lying about the facts in order to make up whatever ruling they want to make up. So I don't know what happens here. Maybe the one thing I saw that I hope might be of interest after this is that, you know, all those states that are passing laws to put the 10 Commandments in public school classrooms? Is it possible that a parent could say, the commandment that says keep the Sabbath day holy, or that, you know, you can't worship any other gods before me, can a parent say that offends my religious beliefs, so I want those posters taken down? Could they now use this Supreme Court ruling to do that? I don't know the answer to that, but man, what a bit of malicious compliance that would be if this whole thing backfires. Anyway, I will pause there for a little bit. What questions do we have here before I move on? Can I remove my kid from the room if they're teaching my son American exceptionalist pseudo historical propaganda citing moral objections? If those theists can do it, why can't I? That's the question. I honestly, I know you're kind of joking, but not really. But like, no one seems to know what the lines are because the court didn't draw any clear lines. It's like they said it's about LGBTQ books, but even then it's kind of hazy. And then where does the decision apply? Does it apply to anything? Does it apply to evolution? Does it apply to Oklahoma social studies curriculum now? We have no clue. And so the only way to do this is to litigate it. But again, the conservatives didn't think through their decision. They just kind of like said, this is what we want to do. So we're doing it. You guys figure it out. It's so irresponsible. Good grief. The additional administrative burden this introduced is ridiculous. No kidding. Because, like, you know how you get kids excited about reading, especially when they're in high school and they want to be on their phones instead? It's that you don't just read classic works of literature. You mix it in with some modern books that where the characters speak like kids do today. And where maybe they're having conversations, but it's like text message to text message in the text. And it's not just, page after page of William Faulkner prose. You know what I mean? But a lot of those modern novels that kids really love, they have these things that are now objectionable. They have gay characters. You know why? Because gay people exist. And they have a trans character because trans people exist. And they are dealing with issues and conflicts in their mind because that's what kids go through. And if you can't read those books, you are undermining everybody's education. This is not one kid with dumb parents getting out of class. At some point, this could be a lot of the classes missing, so we can't even teach this book. What else we got here? Here's what we do. We make them write their beliefs down and they aren't allowed to change them later. What if they put it in a book and they called it the Bible? And then what do? Well, you just open it up to interpretation. And that's the problem, right? I mean, we have a constitution, but the Supreme Court gets to interpret that however they want. I appreciate your sarcasm. When I was teaching high school English, some parents objected to any literature portraying good versus evil, which basically meant any literature with conflict. Yikes. And again, if parents want to object, they can object. But the answer is, I don't care. This is what we're teaching. School board approved it. I'm doing it. Suck it. And I don't know what the solution is now. It's horrible. Is it just me, or are people not aware of the possible abuse and neglect parents could inflict on their queer child just because they're queer? Listen, people are not aware of a lot of things. I think if there's one thing we're learning, it's that most people are. I'm not even saying they're dumb. I'm saying they're preoccupied with other things. Maybe they work a lot of jobs. They don't have time to read up on this stuff. But a lot of people have no clue what they're doing. It's why they vote for Republicans. It's why they allow these decisions. They think this is a good decision for their kid, and it's clearly not. It's why they don't realize they're being manipulated. It's frustrating. It also is all the more reason we need to talk to our neighbors and the people close to us so that they don't make these mistakes. Thank you for that donation. Things going the way they are. Do you think we could get out of paying for wars by creating a religion that forbids paying taxes? I guess the thinking here is, hey, let's take that one to the Supreme Court. I'm not paying my taxes because I oppose where it's being used. I believe they've already ruled on that. You can't religiously object your way out of taxes. But even in theory, no, because the Republicans or the Supreme Court will just say, sorry, that one's an exemption to the rules that we created. Your religion does not matter. Only conservative Christianity matters. Like, they'll always figure out a way to make it benefit them and nobody else. All right, I'm going to jump ahead here. Give me a second. And let me close some of these tabs. In case I get knocked off one more time, I will come back in a little bit, but hopefully this will work out. Give me one moment here. I'm going to try to do one thing, see if this works. We are going to see if this makes things a little better. And Dan, you're going to cheer if you can hear me okay. All right. I think we're okay. Can you hear me? I hope you can hear me now. Should be back on. Yes. All right. Just double checking because, again, like I said, it's a new setup, so some things are a bit wonky today. I got some videos for you coming up. All right. Okay, let's talk about Sean Duffy. He is the Secretary of Transportation right now, the guy who replaced Pete Buttigieg, and he's the reason your planes are crashing and the Newark airport is a punchline. Well, a couple of weeks ago, he gave a commencement address to about 200 graduates at the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy. And these are people who will go on to become active duty officers or reservists in different branches of the military. And instead of saying anything inspirational, he delivered this Jesus packed sermon and pushed Christian nationalist lies. And I want to talk about one of those lies in particular, but I want to play you a little bit of what he said so you understand where he's coming from. So, the bulk of his speech was a series of 9 life lessons that he has learned throughout his career, beginning from his time on MTV's Real World and Road Rules, because he doesn't have any qualifications for the job he's in. But the final rule I want you to be on the lookout for, he basically said, he said you should believe in God, or I'll play the clip. You could see what he said.
There are 2 kinds of people: those who believe in God and those who think they're God. There's something beautiful, humbling, and properly ordered about a man and woman who understand that there is power greater than themselves, that everything is not in their control, and that they are the beloved child of a merciful God who hears their prayers. Before there was GPS technology, sailors solely relied on key stars to keep them, to help them navigate where they were going. Sailors rely on the North Star to lead them, because the North Star remains fixed in the same location throughout the night. In the Middle Ages, men of the sea prayed to the Virgin Mary, who they called Stella Maris, because she was their North Star that pointed them toward God the Father, their protector and spiritual destination. No one knows the unpredictability and storms of nature and life like a sailor. A good sailor knows that in the end, only God can calm the seas and bring them to safety. So stay faithful and never underestimate the power of prayer.
Okay, so that is beyond offensive. It reeks of that old adage, there are no atheists in foxholes, suggesting that when they're under attack, every soldier becomes a believer if they weren't one already. Like, it's a lie. No, there are atheists in foxholes, and not every sailor believes in God. And it's not because they are so arrogant that they believe they are God. So that was absolutely offensive. And not just that, if you look at the statistics put up by the Department of Defense from most recent one I could find is from 2019, only 70% of active duty personnel were Christian, 2% were atheist or agnostic, and a quarter of them were other or unknown. So there are absolutely people in the military who reject belief in God, and quite possibly a whole bunch of them. But to denigrate their sacrifice by pretending that those non-theists must think they are God, that they're selfish and arrogant and unwilling to put their country and other people before themselves, That is deeply offensive coming from someone representing the administration. Like, if officers are religious, so be it. But the US military is and should always remain secular. Plus, if you're in the middle of a battle and you're relying on prayer to get you out of it, good luck. You're going to need it. So there was one other thing he said in the speech that was really weird. He was, as everyone in the Trump administration does, he was trying to figure out a way to blame Biden for everything. So Duffy blamed the Biden administration for the state of the Merchant Marine Academy building. And even then, he tossed religion into it. So this is another clip from his same speech.
You can be part of DOT. And so I want you to know. There's a lot of lessons you all have learned over the last 4 years. One of them, probably the most important, is perseverance. You're the class of COVID shutdowns of C year. You're the class of no hot water for months. You're the class of not enough food. You're the class of paper plates and plastic forks. You are the class of dorms with mold and a dilapidated, falling apart library. Congratulations. You have perseverance. Now, several months ago, I was able to see for myself old tar dripping from the ceilings. I saw dorms rotting with mold. I saw rusty showers with no hot water. And worst of all, I saw Jesus stuffed in the basement.
That last line is a very interesting one. I want to talk about that last line, but also it strikes me as like this guy is blaming everyone else for all these problems. He's blaming the Biden administration for everything. He didn't say once, here's what our administration is doing to fix any of this, because they're not interested in that. They gotta save the money for Jeff Bezos, right? Let's screw over the people serving our military. They're not ICE. We don't care about them. So anyway, that's part of it. What is this Jesus in the basement thing all about? Because that took me down a really dumb rabbit hole. And so now I have to share it with all of you. But let's talk about what this thing actually means. He didn't elaborate on the Jesus bit, but he was implying that the previous administration, which is to blame for everything, is also responsible for putting a painting of Jesus in the basement of the building. They didn't actually stuff Jesus in the basement. That would be big news if that happened. But what is he talking about? Let me share with you what he's talking about. So there is this painting that exists. It's in the Merchant Marine Academy building. It's called Christ on the Water. It was drawn in 1944. And basically a marine artist painted this. And it shows an abnormally large Jesus helping merchant seamen adrift in a lifeboat, presumably after being torpedoed. These are all the merchant marines who are like, oh no, we just died. Jesus, where were you 10 seconds ago? And Jesus is like, I was busy. And then there's one dude on the left there who's clinging for dear life. And Jesus is like, good luck with that. I'm over on the other side. I'm not going to help you with that either. So this painting, it sat in the Merchant Marine building. Specifically, it is a giant, like, what is it, 10 feet by 19 feet painting. It was installed in the Academy's Interfaith Chapel. And in 1961, that chapel became a giant conference room in this building. So it went from being an exclusively religious space to becoming a secular space that everyone kind of uses in that building. So according to their website, that conference room is used by administrators, faculty, staff, and midshipmen for meetings and events, and as a venue for proceedings held to determine whether a midshipman had violated the Academy's honor code. So they have some very serious meetings in there and just general meetings altogether. So in 2023, a group called the Military Religious Freedom Foundation, they said, we're acting on behalf of 17 alumni, staff, faculty, and midshipmen, and we want this painting removed. And they said, just go put it in the chapel. They still had a chapel. It's just not the conference room. They said, we object to this painting. We're not religious. We don't want it to be. And some of them were religious, but we don't want it to be there. So initially, the painting was covered up with a curtain. Look at this. This is before and after. Before Military Religious Freedom Foundation stepped in on the left, you could see the conference room and the painting there. And then afterwards, you could see they covered it up with a curtain. It's not exactly subtle, but basically the Merchant Marine Academy said, okay, we hear your complaint. We'll cover it up while we try to figure out what to do next. Okay, but covering it up with that curtain led to even more problems. Because why did they cover it up with a curtain? Because it's a big ass painting. They need to figure out where it should go, where to store it so it doesn't get ruined, all that. You can't do that overnight. But they also said at the time, we're also not going to use this conference room for anything important until we figure this stuff out, which is fine. Go figure it out. And this was apparently the biggest issue facing the Merchant Marine Academy. Not the mold, not the food, it was the painting. So the Academy did its best to honor church-state separation without upsetting the religious zealots. So by September of 2023, they announced that, hey, everyone, the painting has been taken down. And this is what they wrote on their website. Here we go. Update on the painting entitled Christ on the Water. In late August, the painting was returned to the Academy after several months of conservation and restoration. They basically sent this painting to a conservation firm, and they said it took 4 distinct separate cleanings to remove nicotine, dirt, and varnish from the water, boat, and Christ with aura. So they basically cleaned up the painting and returned it to the Marine Academy, like good as new. So you guys don't be mad at us. We just took it to get restored. And so after that, they moved it down to the chapel. Well, when the Trump administration came to power again in 2025, Duffy was like, no, we got to move that painting back to the conference room because his only goal is to shove Jesus in everybody's faces. And in April, he delivered a ship at that same building saying, you guys, can we bring Jesus up from the basement now? This is part of that speech.
You can be part of DOT. And so I want you to know that I understand the conditions here, and I am going to fight my ass off to make sure you all get the respect and the money that this academy deserves. And so again, not only smart, not only strong, but you are a great looking bunch of young people. Handsome too. And so with that, as you all go into your careers, God bless you. May God keep you safe. But could we bring Jesus up from the basement? Let's not put Jesus in the basement. Let's put him out. Put him out. I know you hear about that. You want Jesus up from the basement, right? Great. That was the loudest applause we got. We are going to work on that together and funding for the Academy. May God bless you all. Stay safe.
I know it happens all the time now, but it should be disturbing to everybody that this guy is giving a sermon to a bunch of military personnel and they are cheering like they were hand selected for a Trump rally. It is disturbing. But also, like, why are they cheering for the painting more than fix the mold? Which, by the way, he hasn't done yet. He doesn't care about them. So anyway, within a month or two, he basically said, you guys, it worked. We fixed all the problems. Forget the mold. You can deal with the mold. We're bringing Jesus back upstairs. He made that announcement. And so they managed to bring it back upstairs. So that's what he was talking about when he was giving this commencement address. And he actually said to the Christian Post at the time, check this out. A spokesperson for Duffy's office could not provide the Christian Post on Monday with a timetable for when the Jesus painting will be brought up from the basement, but said the process has begun and we hope to know more soon. And also, I don't know if this matters or not, but after he gave that awful commencement address, this was a headline that the Vice Admiral and the Rear Admiral, two of the people who run the Merchant Marine Academy, they both suddenly announced their retirements. Maybe because I don't know if the fact that they were trying to deal with church state separation and they weren't just like, oh, yeah, let's bring the painting back up and hang it. They were actually trying to do the respectful thing. I don't know if that had anything to do with why they left, but this is what Sean Duffy and the Trump administration care about. Meanwhile, those people are at this shitty building that is like, they don't have money for the Marines. They have mold everywhere. What the hell? They're not taking care of that stuff. But they got Jesus back up from the basement because that's what matters to these people. It's just embarrassing at this point what these people are doing. Okay, I will stop there with this story. What other questions do we have here? All right, no questions. I'm going to move on to a different story. I'll try to wrap this up soon, and I'm going to skip around a couple of things here, if you don't mind. Yeah, I'm going to move to this story for a second. Okay. Let's talk about this Pride Parade that happened in Pikes Peak, Colorado. So the Pikes Peak Pride Parade, Pikes Peak Pride Festival, it was held a couple of weeks ago near Colorado Springs. And like you would expect, when the parade made its way through the community, the announcer, the MC for the event, read aloud a brief description of the participating groups, saying, next up is this group. Here is their description that they gave to me. Let's all cheer for them as they walk past us in this parade. And it turns out one of the groups that was marching in the parade was this one, Satanic Colorado. Right there is the logo. You could see these shiny, happy people everywhere. They were marching in the parade because that's awesome. And I want to play for you the clip of what happened when it was their turn to march through the main part of the parade. Here's what happened.
And next up, we have the Satanic Colorado, a non-theistic religious community operating throughout the state, promoting benevolence and empathy among all people, advocating for justice, equality, and working toward a world where all can live freely and authentically. Hail Satan!
That makes me laugh because that announcer clearly was just reading whatever someone handed him. Like the group, the Satanic Colorado group said, all right, this is our description if you got to read it. And at the end, you could even tell that the announcer said it tongue in cheek, like, Hail Satan. Isn't that funny? All right, next up, here's the cancer hospital. That's what the MC did. But as soon as that clip aired, and you could tell even the audience was getting a kick out of it, they were cheering at the end of that. Guess who posted about this? Because she was very, very upset about this. It's the stochastic terrorist known as Libs of TikTok. She posted this. She said a satanic organization walked in the Pikes Peak Pride Parade as an announcer yells, Hail Satan, and it's met with cheers. Demonic, she writes. And this has been shared a gazillion times, just like everything else she does. So this thing was shared, and all of a sudden all hell broke loose, because when she shares stuff and she's calling on her fans to basically terrorize whoever does this stuff, and what made matters worse is that the Colorado Springs City Council, which sponsored this particular parade, they basically took the bait. So earlier this month, that same city council said, we are not issuing any sort of proclamation honoring Pride Month, even though they did it years prior. And they said they no longer wanted to engage in identity-based or political gestures. And if the implication is that the city council was no longer inclusive, the president of the city council, Lynette Crow Iverson, this is what she told a local right-wing radio station or something. Check this out on Instagram. Reaction to Satan in Pride Parade. Statement from the council president. The recent incident at a Pride event in our city, where an individual gave a public shout out to Satan, was not only offensive, but completely unacceptable. This kind of message does not represent the values of Colorado Springs or the respectful expression of any legitimate cause. It was a blatant provocation designed to shock and divide. Let me be clear. This is exactly the kind of divisive and performative behavior city council leadership is determined to avoid. Blah, blah, blah. Our job is to serve all citizens. She goes on for a while. She says a bunch of dumb stuff. And look at this. When events cross a line into mockery or extremism, they do real damage to community trust. We do not pander, we lead. What the hell is she talking about? All of this over a description that was handed to her by a description that was handed to the MC by the group itself. There's nothing to be mad about, but these people are furious. So she gave that statement. She's an example of bad leadership. But to be clear, there was no public shout out to Satan. There was a brief acknowledgement of Satanic Colorado for marching in the parade, the same as with everybody else. The announcer read the copy that was submitted, and members of the group were also allegedly saying the words as they walked that route. But like, judging by the tone, everyone seemed to understand this was all kind of amusing and not serious. And of course, the irony is that the Satanists don't actually believe in Satan. That would be Christians. So like, what part of that description was offensive? I have no clue. Was it the part about promoting benevolence and empathy? Was it the advocacy for justice, equality, and working toward a world where all can live freely and authentically? Like, the fact is, even if no one said "Hail Satan," there are conservatives who would freak out by the very inclusion of the satanic group in that mix. You can't satisfy them. So if you're going to be in that parade, you might as well poke the bear a little bit. But then the city council went even further, because then they started talking about what they could do to punish the people organizing the parade. Check this out. I have to say, I was shocked, said city council member Dave Donaldson. Veterans Day parade will get nothing this year. The Festival of Lights will get nothing. But that celebration got $60,000, and it was a 50% increase. Donaldson says he understands free speech, but feels that this crossed a line because tax funds went to Pikes Peak Pride. He understands free speech, but you guys, that doesn't mean speech he doesn't like. That is not how free speech works, apparently. So he also complained about this later on during a city work session. But again, if his goal is, hey, we gave money to the Pride Parade and they allowed Satanists to be a part of it, maybe we should rescind their money. That would be devastating. And that would go against anything that the city council does that's actually good. When the local news outlet asked a member, the spokesperson for Satanic Colorado, a response, this is what they said. So many of us have religious traumas, some oftentimes related to our queerness, and it is sort of a reclamation. These words have been used to harm us in the past, and to be able to kind of disarm that harmful intent, that's what they want to do, said Legs Fidesi. Love the name. But again, this is the thing. Why do you think the Satanists are doing this? Because a lot of them have been harmed by religious extremism. And this is one way to kind of push back against that. A little tongue-in-cheek fun. And now the city council's like, maybe we should take away all their money. Satanic Colorado actually issued a lengthier response after the city council member spoke up. And they said, well, we're very flattered that this Colorado Springs City Council has taken such a sudden interest in Satanism. The recent statements are ignorant, malicious, and could not possibly be more wrong. There was no incident at the parade. There was nothing extreme, provocative, or shocking about our presence at Pride. This goes on for a while. But what else do they say? The only divisive and performative behavior on display here is that of Crow Iverson herself. We have been a part of this city's tradition of vibrant religious expression since before she was appointed to city council. We will continue to be long after her tenure expires. Hail Satan, they say at the end. So good for them. I don't know what happens from here on out, but I love that they're doing that. I hope there is no funding revoked, even if some of the conservatives on the council can't handle non-traditional ideas. But it looks like those bigots are outnumbered, thankfully. But we won't know until later this year when the budget is considered. I spoke to that leader of Satanic Colorado, and they said if it wasn't for that Libs of TikTok video, everything would have been fine because no one really complained in the moment or immediately afterward. Furthermore, they said that outside of the food vendors, theirs was probably the most popular booth at the Pride Festival, which I love. And they also said members don't proselytize when people interact with them. More than anything, community members choose their own levels of engagement, and they have a nice time. For what it's worth, I found video of the 2023 Pride Parade where you could hear the announcer reading similar copy about Satanic Colorado. And at the time, he didn't say Hail Satan, but I wanted to share with you. This is what he did say. So whether you're looking to snuggle a goat or just meet some like-minded folks, we've got you covered. Happy Pride. That was the copy that the MC read 2 years ago, which is fantastic. So, these appearances in the parade, they always generate zero controversy until some right-wing bigot decides they want to make a big deal about this, and then they go crazy. It's very frustrating. So I will stop there for now. Any other questions here before I move on? I know the Wi-Fi is going wonky here. Come back. There we go. Satanic Colorado may be repetitive and a tautology. Interesting point there. I don't know how non-theistic Colorado is, but it is pretty Christian in some parts. How dare you publicly display your religious affiliation? Yeah, I mean, there were other religious groups there too. They displayed theirs. No one had any problem with it. It never fails to amaze me how Christians can blow a gasket over some satanic group, yet starving children bore them. Yeah, and poor people getting healthcare definitely annoys the hell out of them, which is why they vote for their representatives. I don't get it. Thank you for that donation. I'm going to have a patriotic weekend of leaving messages for my Congress people's voicemail telling them how disappointed in them I am for passing the big bullshit bill. I love that you're doing that. I wish that had an impact at this point, because I don't know. They're not listening. And that's the point. The answer isn't to complain to them. It's to rally against them and get someone else elected in your community. And it's protesting, and it's making it visible and in everyone's face that this is unacceptable in your community. I think that's the way forward. I know it's a long way to go before those midterm elections, but that may be the best path forward. So we'll think about that. Any other questions here? All right. For what it's worth, I did have a couple of stories, but I've been going for a long time, and this is all a new setup. So I think I'm going to pause for now. Thank you to all of you for watching. If you have any critiques or comments about this new setup, I'm going to try to play around with it over the next couple of weeks. I will be back next Thursday night and hopefully you'll see something even more different again. As always, remember, you could support this channel by going to patreon.com/Hemant, and you could support, you can sign up for my newsletter at friendlyatheist.com. I appreciate it. Thank you so much to Den for helping out. And before this thing goes off the rails, I'm going to say goodnight to you all. Thank you so much. Have a good one.